I'm an artist, primarily making paintings and installations in the Inland Empire, so just right on the fringes of LA County. And I graduated from Claremont Graduate University in 2020. I did my BFA at Biola University, and now I live in the IE with my partner and our cat. And I have a home studio here, so I have a place to do woodworking and my sculpture, more messy area, and then a painting studio as well.
How has your background sort of shaped your style of art?
So I think my current perspective is that art is has an amazing capacity to provide like a memorable experience, as well as to challenge and change perspectives. And this was shaped by my experience growing up in a very religious home and family. And I was noticing within that religious structure, and then as I became interested in art, the religious art, that women were typecast in religion as martyr, mystic, mother, or whore, essentially. And I wasn't seeing myself in any of that. So I'm just trying to offer a new perspective.
So your work then, as you've written on your website, explores the relationship between gender and piety. How did you begin creating work, I guess, in that fold?
The themes have remained the same, but how the work looks has changed over time. And that relationship of gender and piety jumps off of what I mentioned in terms of my changing perspectives and not seeing women in positions of any type of authority within the type of religion, which is Christianity, that I was brought up in. And an example of work that I made to kind of disrupt that was having a series of women. I did a piece called Orange Royalty, another one, Blue Bishop, where there's a woman of color wearing a mitre hat, which is one of the like those Pope pointy hats. And another one wearing a kind of prayer veil, pink Orthodox, just like reinstating with these women holding these symbols of piety, yet the figures are turned away from us. So we don't have access to them as kind of individuals. And in the way, they're also rejecting the symbols themselves. They're not holding them with authority. The symbols are just there and they're not acknowledging it. So it's both that these women can have a relationship with this kind of religious power. They can hold it, like that's without question, but also asking the question, well, what type of power do these symbols actually have?
You also described the work as letting the audience experience autonomy. Are you doing that through the subject experiencing their own autonomy, choosing their own decisions on how to, represent this religious garb?
Yeah. I see my work kind of providing a type of religious autonomy in two ways. One is in installation. So I did a series of sand installations, which are lined with incense, and then creating a type of situation where the viewer is invited to step over these almost mandala-like sand floor pieces to enter this kind of sanctum, if you will, that's open to anyone. You don't need to have any type of religious or spiritual identity, which I think is different than, again, the type of religion I was brought in, where you need a certain education, it's a hierarchy. So this provides autonomy if anyone is invited. And then secondly, I did a series of paintings. One that comes to mind is called Bull Pit, where I was painting like a pulpit in like a neon style. So it looked like a neon sign of a pulpit. So again, like thinking about who gets to stand behind these things and share their perspective. Well, what if we made it into a kind of commercial sign that like, come one, come all, like share your opinion and how you feel about things. So that's kind of the autonomy that I was coming at it from.
So your other works too have, in this neon theme, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
you have different aspects of precious things. So you can have like the one neon sign that says salvation on it, or the other neon works that are bouquets of flowers, but they look like they're in a fragile position. So what is the theme that you're weaving in between these with different sorts of icons and things that you're including?
In disrupting and thinking about disruption of this preciousness, which to me also is very tied to exclusivity, and available to a particular type of person. I was thinking of like, well, what's a symbol or kind of sign that is available to a lot of people? And neon came to mind because of its commercial and advertising and kind of everyday type material that we see. So I thought that kind of by putting both of these together, it then has a conversation, a synthesis, if you will, a synthesis or perhaps a disagreement of who has the most power here. Is it the commercial or is it the precious, or how do they work together? The flower pieces that I'm working with, flowers, symbolically have represented the feminine for forever, either the feminine or particular females. The Virgin Mary was always accompanied with like white lilies or irises, things like that. So thinking about this almost in like a Dutch type floral landscape with the black background and these really dramatic flowers surrounded by this either ring or disruptive neon to combat that kind of like the precious feminine virtue with advertising. Like pawn shops, or strip club, the neon meaning there.
Then maybe taking that same thinking, how do you approach a new piece? Is it the material you want to work with, or is there a message that you start at?
It kind of varies. I don't know if it's consistent all the time, but it usually starts with some sort of idea. I did a piece called White Woman's Tears. And as I'm thinking about like the neon in a way, I'm just going to say neon for clarity, even though we know it's LED. The neon in a way is, I think, kind of poking fun a little bit at the subject because of that preciousness with the commercial. It's like it's a little jab, I think, a little bit of like, don't take yourself too seriously. And I was thinking and I was researching and reading about, White Woman's Tears and thinking that ought to be painted. And I think neon is the perfect way to make to make a self-portrait and these big cartoonish blue tears. And so for that one, it was kind of I was doing some reading that image came to mind. So I think it's like usually the idea first, and then I'll pick whatever material I think best suits it.
In your work, as you're describing pulling inspiration from religious tradition and other sorts of aspects, from reading different interviews and things, it seems like you also pull some inspiration from past art pieces or different things that are described. The piece that one that I really remember is the one of the crumpled pieces that has the yellow with the flowers on it. I think it was described as like that was like a wallpaper. Could you try to describe what it is that you're wanting to translate when you're bringing this like a traditional aspect into the future? As
it relates to the wallpaper, that not pattern, but those flowers came from a particular icon. I don't know if it's permanently at the Norton Simon or was just visiting at the Norton Simon, but I saw it there. And it was at the bottom of a icon of the Virgin Mary, of these just floating and suspended flowers. And so I took some pictures of that and adapted them a little bit, less of the flat medieval style into something a little bit more like fleshy, and also did rather than, the gold, I just used, a kind of yellowy house paint. So I think that move from, again, the preciousness of materials and also signifiers, to make it into some sort of pattern that you could hang in your home as like wallpaper, decorative wallpaper, that has links to something that had been so, revered and worked really hard on, was kind of where I derived that.
So I found one question that was on like I believe an old blog post of yours. I think you were you were writing about speaking with an artist who was more experienced and giving you some advice. And I believe this was a question coming from her to you. But I would love to know if you had found an answer to it. For whom are you making art?
I think, I don't want to make too many assumptions here, but I think on like the ground level, artists make work for themselves, just to start with, because otherwise you wouldn't, make the thing unless you wanted to see it come to fruition. But I think I make work to, communicate something that can be understood. And for somebody who's willing to look at something differently and change, not necessarily change a mind, but have a conversation about it. So for like that Blue Bishop one, for folks who either are not used to or take offense to seeing a woman of color wear the Pope's hat, like that piece is for you. If you're willing to have a conversation with me, a civil conversation or discussion about it, and be engaged, go past like the hook of engagement of just be like, oh, this is interesting, to like lean into that,
What will your art look like in the future?
I'm not done working with the neon and the flowers yet. I'm working on a couple pieces now, but I have plans and I'm thinking about down the line of how I can scale my operation. I think scale works don't have to be big to be moving by any means, but scale does do something about having a particular type of spatial performance. And I'm thinking about how I can work large. So scale is one. And the second one, in the near future, probably this year, I'm really wanting to collaborate with some artists who are doing have different crafts, whether it's fashion or photography, things that are not my area of expertise, but I feel like my kind of vision, and find somebody with similar aesthetics and vision, we could kind of create something really cool together. So I think collaboration and scale is where I'm seeing the work move, but who knows? But that's the plan.
Well, where can people go to follow you and support you?
Yeah, website is great, sydneywalters.com. Instagram, I think it's at, oh gosh, squid.queen with an E, I think.
Yeah.
I think those two places are the best.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time for this.
Thanks so much, Eric. It's been a pleasure.